Program Director, Minister of Labour, Minister Mildred Oliphant, NEDLAC Executive Director, Mr. Madoda Vilagazi, ministers and deputy ministers, and leaders of labor, business, community sector, members of the diplomatic corps who are here, our traditional leaders who are here, our religious leaders, distinguished guests, and ladies and gentlemen. It's a real joy to stand before you at this job summit, which many of us have looked forward to having. Those of you who have had the privilege of listening to Begi carefully will know that when he said that this is not a presidential summit and that this is a NEDLAC summit, he actually wanted to say that, like it or not, this is an organized labor summit. And we've all been invited to this summit. And he and I often don't agree on many things. And he's not shy to vocalize the fact that, President, I don't agree with you. But today, on one thing we do agree on, is that we agree that this summit, we agreed before we came here, that we would not use this summit as a platform for lamentation, but we are going to use this summit as a platform to seek and find solutions to resolve the unemployment crisis in our country. And I'm glad that he's living up to that. Hasn't he really grown up? You can see he has grown up. I recently read what Ms. Kilebogile Liepile wrote in her report called Life in South Africa, Reason for Hope, as part of her work at the South African Institute of Race Relations. And she starts her report by saying, how do you tally the progress or otherwise made by a society such as South Africa's jobless growth, yes, unemployment, no better life for all, failure to improve social and economic circumstances, failed transformation, she writes, a low point for race relations, worsening poverty and inequality. These are all comments, she continues, that often appear in the mainstream media. If these statements, she says, collectively seek to suggest that there is a great deal wrong with our society, this is because in far too many areas, South Africa does not deliver on its potential to become a fully free and prosperous society. Close quotes. I found this instructive as we gather here and wondered whether we should not use this moment, and particularly this summit, to deliver on what she says we don't use our potential to address the challenges that our country faces. And I wonder to myself whether do we not have a moment at this summit to do precisely that and unleash the potential that we have as a nation to address the issue of joblessness and unemployment. We gather here today to answer the call of the people of our country for decent work. And we have gathered here also as social partners, yes, as business, labor, community, as well as government, having agreed on a broad range of measures to create and to protect jobs. Now, this is the moment that many in our country have been waiting for. They've been waiting to see whether labor, business, government, and community will arrive at a stage where we will agree on a number of interventions that we could utilize as instruments to address the unemployment crisis and challenge that we face. Unemployment is the greatest challenge facing our country. At this moment in the history of our country, we have just too many people who are unemployed. And unemployment diminishes our ability to be able to achieve a number of goals, to eradicate poverty, to tackle inequality, and to also improve the lives of the working class and the working poor in our country. Unemployment has a devastating effect on families. It also has a terrible effect on communities. It erodes people's dignity. As you look at unemployed people in our country, they go around the streets of our country, the pathways of our villages, aimless. They almost go around like zombies. People who are able-bodied without work have their dignity destroyed and eroded. That is what unemployment does. And it contributes to social problems like poor health, poor educational outcomes, substance abuse, and also criminality. The extreme unemployment in this country is the product of an economy that for several decades has been starved of any meaningful investment in its human capital, where most people have been denied the opportunity to own assets and to utilize those assets to get on with their lives, as well as to develop their skills. The structure of our economy, which was built on the extraction of minerals, where ownership and the control of those assets are highly concentrated and remain to this day untransformed. As a result, the decline of the mining industry and manufacturing has cost the country millions of jobs, and much economic capacity has been destroyed. Low levels of growth in recent years has undermined our efforts to overcome the economic legacy of apartheid. Policy uncertainty, as well as policy inconsistency, the onerous regulations that we have, and the declining business and consumer confidence have also curtailed investment in the productive sectors of our economy. There have also been significant levels of public investment in a number of areas, in infrastructure, that in the past have kept our economy afloat, particularly following the 2008 global financial crisis. That has tapered off as consumption spending and debt servicing costs have consumed a great portion of our budget. Our economic performance has also been undermined by state capture and corruption in both public institutions, and now of late we're seeing and learning of what this is also doing in a number of private companies or private institutions. State capture and corruption has undermined investor confidence, we must admit, but it has also undermined public trust. It has eroded key institutions of the state and diverted resources that were intended to support development and therefore to raise the levels of life of our people. While progress has been made in lifting millions of our people out of dire poverty, many of our people still face great hardship across the length and the breadth of our country. The apartheid special landscape makes economic opportunities scarce. It increases the cost of living and diminishes the quality of life of many of our people. Many people, especially young people, lack the skills and the work experience needed to find a job and also to participate meaningfully in the economy, as we were hearing from Tulani earlier. As we speak, rising international oil prices combined with investor concerns about emerging economies are pushing up the price of petrol and other fuels, making life harder and much more expensive for all South Africans, but particularly for poor people in our country. The jobs that have been created over the past few years have not kept pace with the growth of the population or the expansion of the workforce. We have therefore gathered here at this job summit to respond to these challenges, to respond meaningfully to the economic challenges that our country faces, which manifest themselves through unemployment, poverty, and inequality, because that is the real impact that these have on our people. In the National Development Plan, we said that if we were to effectively and sustainably tackle this triple challenge, we should aim to reduce unemployment to at least 6% by 2030. Where our unemployment stands today, we do need to acknowledge that we will not be able to reach that target unless we do something extraordinary. Since the announcement of the Job Summit in the State of the Nation address, all social partners have been engaged in intensive discussions to find and to craft an agreement to begin to address this crisis. And I wish to sincerely commend and to thank the social partners who've been hard at work through their various delegates in the various working committees that were established, because they have worked extremely hard, and they are the ones who have made this job summit possible today. And let's give them a round of applause for the wonderful work that they have been doing. And also thank our colleagues at NEDLAC for having kept the process together. As we heard from the General Secretary Beki, yes, there were moments when some of them wanted to walk out, when some of them thought that no progress would ever be made. Some thought that this was just going to be a talk shop. And I'd like to thank them as well for having stuck to the task. And as I met them from time to time as they gave me their reports and urged them and egged them to carry on, I realized that this is truly a very difficult task. But today we are grateful that they have been able to reach consensus on a number of issues. The social partners have agreed that this presidential job summit will emerge with a framework agreement that is both ambitious and realizable. It is the product of intensive engagement amongst all of them over all these months since February. It has been done in a spirit of cooperation, underpinned by the need to reach consensus on a number of issues, but it has also been done on the basis that the unemployment challenge that we face should be seen as a common problem to all of us as South Africans, and that it does not belong to any one single social partner, be it government or business or labor or communities. It belongs to all of us, and therefore it behoves on all of us to find solutions, to come up with interventions that are going to help us to address this challenge. Importantly, the framework that has been arrived at provides the outline of an emerging social compact to grow an inclusive economy and fundamentally change our society as well. One of the great difficulties we've faced in recent years is that cooperation between communities, labor, and government and business has weakened, making it difficult to advance the collective interest. Countries that have succeeded very well in tackling the economic challenges that they themselves have faced, as well as social problems, are countries that have been willing to get all partners to sit down and reach agreement on what needs to be done and to work together to ensure that it truly does get done. Countries like Ireland, the Netherlands, and Spain have been successful in forging social accords in response to economic difficulties and challenges that they have faced right through the modern era that we live in. Yet in South Africa, with low levels of trust, weak confidence, and heightened social tensions, we have neglected what I would call our strongest and greatest asset, our ability to unite and work together. It was by working together that we managed to overcome the nightmare of apartheid. That is what brought an end to what many people believed was an intractable conflict that had raged for generations. We were able to, in an inclusive way, to write a democratic constitution that guarantees the equal rights for all the people of our country. Now, this framework agreement gives us the opportunity to once again develop trust and forge cooperation amongst all of us as social partners. Through this framework agreement, we are demonstrating that we are capable of developing a new social compact for jobs, for growth, and for transformation of our economy. This Presidential Job Summit is just the start of the process of serious engagement that will intensify in the coming months. As I had a few occasions to meet with all the social partners, they kept saying, we need more time to sit amongst ourselves to discuss important issues that range from the structure of our economy, the future trajectory of our economy, the skills challenge that our country faces, the educational outcomes of our education system, challenges of climate change, yes, the future of work, and a whole range of other things. This is what the social partners united in the NEDLAC process have been saying they want to do. So this summit is the beginning, is the real start of a process that will engage all the social partners in serious engagement. It is therefore not a once-off event, but the first phase of an extensive process in which all of us will work closely together to improve growth, to protect existing jobs and to work together to create new jobs, because this is a common problem to all of us. The framework agreement makes provision for monitoring mechanisms, including the setting up of a presidential jobs committee that will be composed of all the social partners, what I would call, or what I have dubbed, the Presidential Jobs Brains Trust. And each time I've met them, I've said to them, colleagues, combined here and meeting here in this setting is the true brains trust of our nation with regard to job creation. And let us therefore utilize this strength and this platform to make sure that indeed we do address the unemployment challenge in our people, in our nation. And so this Presidential Jobs Committee will ensure effective implementation of the measures that we will need to take on the issues that we have agreed on. It acknowledges that there are several areas that do indeed require further work, further refinement, and social partners have agreed to devote more time, as I was saying, to discuss and to reach consensus on those. And their approach is, there is no problem without a solution, rather than, this is just too difficult, we are not going to be able to find solutions to the challenge that we face. I will now touch on the key issues that the social partners have agreed should emerge from this job summit. As a critical starting point, they have agreed that in the current economic environment, the job summit must focus on both creating new jobs and retaining existing jobs. All social partners have committed themselves to concrete steps that need to be taken to avoid retrenchments and to support struggling companies. Now, this is an important agreement that has been arrived at. Yes, all social partners initially were poles apart before they agreed to this type of arrangement. And this is to address the challenge so that we are able to ensure that the challenge and the problem of retrenchment or job losses or layoffs is addressed in quite an innovative way to minimize the impact on people as a whole. We have agreed that the training layoff scheme, which was introduced, should be utilized. It was introduced in response to the 2008 crisis, should immediately be revived and improved because it has been lying there and it is an instrument that can be utilized with good effect. Business and government have also agreed to establish what we call a rapid response group of teams of experts to assist businesses that are in crisis. There is agreement that all possible alternative as well as opportunities need to be explored before retrenchment is considered, including executive salary sacrifices and the foregoing of dividends. Now, this I regard as a revolutionary decision. That, yes, before we opt for just throwing people into the street and saying you have lost your jobs, a number of alternatives as well as opportunities should be utilized. And yes, they should include sacrifices that will also be made by those who earn high salaries. A number of people have said that this is, yes, something that we are prepared to do. And I hope that they live up to precisely that they have committed themselves to. For the economy to grow and for jobs to be created, it is essential that there is substantial increase in domestic demand. This means that South African companies, the government itself, and consumers must commit to buying local. If we do not buy the food that comes out of South African soil, there will be no farms and no farm workers. It will just be job losses. Is that what we want? No, that is not what we want. If we do not buy goods made by South African hands, there will be no factories and no workers. Is that what we want? No, that is not what we want. The most direct way for South Africans and South African companies to create jobs is to buy only South African products. And this is the time to put South Africa first. This is the time to put South Africans first. And this we say not in an arrogant way, like it is said elsewhere. We say it with deep meaning, with deep feeling, that when it comes to buying local, that is where we want to put our country first. So yes, maybe we must also develop our own slogan of a special type, that South Africa first in a special way, not in an arrogant way. This is a message that must reverberate across the country, and that must find expression in concrete action. The framework agreement goes into detail on measures to promote local procurement, both within the public and the private sectors, even to the point of outlining the specific interventions that can be taken in each sector and in various companies. Government has undertaken to simplify as well as to speed up the process for the designation of products for local procurement, and organized labor, in partnership with Proudly South Africa, will proactively identify opportunities for new designations as well. As part of this agreement, a number of companies have made specific commitments to local procurement initiatives as part of their organizational strategies. And these companies have come forward and have said, this is what we are prepared to do to enhance job creation in our country. They include companies like Adcock Ingram, Anglo Gold Ashanti, Clientele, Coca-Cola South Africa, Edcon, First Rand, Lixil, Mondi, Nando's, Nestle, AB InBev, Sapi, Sasol, Standard Bank, and Tsogosan, and a number of all others. Now let's give them a round of applause in advance as we move forward. They will be the first to be invited to join a Buy South Africa Circle, which recognizes companies that are leaders in buying local and have demonstrated in practice their commitment to supporting South African enterprise, and by so doing, supporting the creation of jobs in South Africa. Companies that sign up to this commitment will, amongst other things, be celebrated, be acknowledged at an annual dinner that will be convened by the President. On an annual basis, we will celebrate and acknowledge them. And who does not want to come to a dinner like that? So we invite all those companies to come. I can promise you the meal is presidential, the setting is presidential, and everything is just great, representing the best of what South Africa is all about. While promoting local demand, the social partners have also identified the need to more aggressively promote South African exports. From this job summit, we will embark on an export drive that prioritizes manufactured and processed goods from our own country. Yes, addressing the issue of beneficiation, addressing the issue of adding value to what we export and sell to other nations, ensuring that we derive full employment benefit from our mineral and agricultural resources and everything that we have in abundance. We will seize the opportunities presented by regional integration process and the establishment of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area to produce more goods for other African markets. Africa is waiting for us to bring in more and more goods, and the platform that we now are going to have of having a free trade area on our continent is going to boost the manufacturing base in our own country so that we can export as much as we are able to do so. Social partners have also agreed to unblock impediments to expanding exports, such as inefficiencies at ports and poor knowledge of potential markets, and to ensure greater support to companies seeking export opportunities. Now, this was arrived at with inputs from labor and from business because they are the ones who experience some of these difficulties. The coming together of all these social partners gave us a chance to be able to identify real bottlenecks which, if removed, would be able to lead to more and more increased exports. Through this framework agreement, we will be mobilizing also another area of great difficulty for many businesses in our country, finance. We want to mobilize that on a far greater scale, ensuring that it is focused on building our manufacturing capacity so that our country can re-industrialize, so that our manufacturing base can come back to its original self, but in a much more enhanced way as we transform our economy. The financial sector, as part of the Transformation Code, will invest 100 billion rand over 5 years in black-owned industrial enterprises. This is a great boon indeed. Government will work with the financial sector to develop facilities for financing at preferential rates and extended repayment terms. The social partners have also agreed on strategic interventions in economic sectors that have great potential for growth and even more potential for employment creation. So we will identify those various sectors, and we will, in a very active and proactive manner, be able to make those interventions. The agriculture and agro-processing value chain, as set out in the National Development Plan, as well as the 9-point plan, is one area that has significant potential. It is estimated that global demand for fresh food or fresh produce could increase South Africa's horticultural trade from 54 billion rand to 90 billion rand by 2030. This is a great opportunity that the social partners are going to look to mining, to enhancing, to make sure that we get the greatest benefit out of. Through our program of accelerated land reform, we will expand the area of land under cultivation, under irrigation, to substantially increase the number of people productively working the land. One writer yesterday, Ben Cousins, wrote in an article in the Business Day that there are 200,000 black and emerging farmers, who we now need to focus our attention on. And this government has all the great intention to focus on those as we proceed with our land reform program. We will also be focusing on rural dwellers, the ownership, on issues like ownership and tenure rights that are also needed to unlock the economic potential of the land in our country. Specific interventions include the procurement of new hectares under black ownership and redirecting expenditure to black-owned as well as women-owned farmers who are also producers and processors. Blended finance models for effective agricultural support are also being addressed and are being finalized. In addition to government initiatives amounting to approximately 600 million, as AgBiz and the Banking Association of South Africa have developed a blended finance model that is designed specifically to make additional funds available to assist potential redistribution beneficiaries to access capital in a much easier way. In the metals and mining and machinery sector, government has agreed to expeditiously finalize an export tax on scrap metal and ensure better access to incentives like downstream steel industry competitiveness fund. Other value chains that are receiving focused attention include subsectors of the manufacturing industry in areas such as clothing, textiles, leather, footwear, furniture, as well as the automotive industry. Organized labor, through one of its member unions, plans to open a union-owned clothing factory in the Eastern Cape within the next 2 years. This initiative, now this is a union, and this innovative and welcome initiative will create quite a number of jobs. It will create, at the very least, 100 jobs initially, and aims to contribute to the reindustrialization of a province which suffers from widespread poverty and unemployment. And this is something that the unions should be applauded for, because now they are moving up the curve and demonstrating that they too can be job creators. And I applaud that union. Colleagues, if we are to succeed in creating the number of jobs we need, it is essential, very essential, that small and medium and micro enterprises, like those that the union is getting involved in and many others, take their rightful place in the economic life of our nation, just as Minister Lindiwe Zulu has taken her rightful place in advocating the role of small and medium enterprises. Social partners have agreed to maximize the collaboration between the public and private sector, particularly in the hubs and incubators that these entities have created. Government will continue to advocate, educate, and assist, but also monitor the implementation of the 30% set aside for SMMEs by all spheres of government and their agencies. We agreed on this set aside, and its ability to help us create jobs is quite huge. We are now intent on making sure that this is a reality. And the Presidential Jobs Committee is going to be focusing on this very closely to make sure that indeed this 30% set aside does indeed happen. One of the country's greatest potential strengths is our young population, whose capabilities and talents the social partners are committed to develop as a matter of priority. A specific area of focus is the development of the technical skills that are required in the industrial economy. Thulani has already gone to great length to actually describe the challenges that young people face, and particularly those who are also graduates, that they graduate from all these institutions but do not get work. And when they do seek work, they are asked to come with an experience certificate. And it is for that reason that young people have said the issue of experience must now be done away with. They must be brought into the job situation because that's where they are going to get their experience. Mechanisms are being put in place to enable companies to form partnerships with nearby TVET colleges, where the colleges offer the theoretical component of the program and companies offer the practical and workplace components. This is part of a series of initiatives supported through the framework agreement to ensure that graduates are absorbed into the economy. Yes, Thulani says that young people at TVET colleges would like to know that as they leave TVET colleges, they do have guaranteed jobs. This is what happens in Germany. In Germany, as young people leave their training colleges, they are already guaranteed of jobs. Why can we not live up to that as well? Because it is possible and it can be done. And we would like this to be done and to be focused on, because through that, we will be able to create many more jobs for the young people in our country. Effective skills development on a large scale will not only help to expand the opportunities and the capabilities of young people, but will also assist in reducing the wage gap between the lowest and the highest paid due to skills scarcities. One of the greatest barriers to investment, to growth, and to job creation is corruption within all spheres of government, state-owned enterprises, and companies. We are determined as government to intensify the work we have already started to end state capture and to root out corruption wherever it occurs and by whomever it is done, to bring those responsible to book so that they can be accountable for their wrongs. The social partners have agreed to support the government's anti-corruption strategy and to develop their own complementary strategies of dealing with corruption. Business has committed to implementing a zero-tolerance approach to corruption and will develop certain initiatives to develop training of its various people to combat corruption. Social partners agreed on the need to introduce financial disclosure for all relevant government employees and also conduct lifestyle audits. Through this job summit, government, labor, business, and the community sector have agreed on concrete interventions to boost employment. And a number of those who've been looking at this summit and saying that this is going to be another talk shop have been dismissing the efficacy of this summit and its effectiveness. But we would like to say that this time around, we are determined to implement the various interventions that labor, business, communities, and government have come up with. And they have come up with a plethora of interventions. And you may say that this is just a cocktail of wishes and things that people would like to see done. It has been thoroughly processed, thoroughly discussed over the past few months since February. And I am satisfied that we've now calibrated what needs to be done to embark on the various interventions. In my input now, I am by no means touching on every intervention that needs to be made or to be embarked upon or that has been agreed to. There are quite a number of others, and the time and space that one has in talking here at the podium does not give one the ability to cover everything. But I can say without any equivocation that the social partners have actually risen to the challenge, and they have come up not only with a wonderfully crafted framework, but they've also come up with a structure which is going to monitor, which is also going to report on an ongoing basis to the President on what we are working on to address the job challenge that our nation faces. We estimate that the interventions that they've come up with will create an additional 275,000 direct jobs a year. This is over and above the jobs that would have been created without these interventions, which was on average about 300,000 a year over the past few years. The Job Summit agreement complements other initiatives to create jobs. In addition to what has been agreed to between the social partners under the auspices of NEDLEC, several companies are working either individually or with others in their sector, and they are approaching government and disclosing to us precisely what they want to do. A number of companies and players in our economy have got plans to expand and create new jobs. They have taken the initiative themselves, understanding that sustainable employment creation is beneficial to their own businesses, to the communities in which they have their operations or are located, and to broader society. They also understand that job creation is part of a virtuous cycle that is going to lead to a whole number of other great benefits. Greater employment increases demand for goods and services, enabling, yes, established companies to expand and new ones to emerge, thereby creating more job opportunities and also creating demand. Demand in our economy is one thing that is mostly needed. Now, the stimulus recovery plan that we announced the other day is one of those areas where we believe jobs will be created. The framework agreement that will emerge from this summit provides significant additional impetus to the implementation of this economic stimulus and recovery plan that we put forward. The plan includes a range of immediate measures to restore the economy to growth, improve investor confidence, and also to establish a platform for greater job creation. As part of the plan, government will, as we've all heard, but one wants to repeat it for good emphasis, so that it is seen as part of the broader plan or strategy that we have to address the challenge of unemployment. We want to implement growth-enhancing economic reforms, many of which we have announced. We want to reprioritize, yes, our spending to support job creation. We want to establish the infrastructure fund, and work has already started in terms of establishing this infrastructure fund. And we also want to address immediate needs that have an impact on the social life of our people, particularly in health as well as in education. But we also want to invest in municipal social infrastructure improvement. Our experience is that infrastructure development can draw many unemployed people into economic activity relatively quickly. And this we've not only seen in our own country leading up to 2010, but we see it in a number of other countries. When countries embark on huge infrastructural projects, they're able to draw many more people into the employment ranks because manufacturing also benefits, as does construction and a number of others. The infrastructure fund we are establishing, which will be supported by a strong technical team, which will execute the projects, will ensure that infrastructure projects are implemented faster, they have greater impact on employment and job creation, as well as localization. We hope and we know that with government contributing to this fund, we will be able to create a huge and mega fund. And initially, we are going to be contributing 400 billion over the next 3 years, which we will use to leverage additional resources that we will be able to agglomerate from a number of players in the economy, from developmental finance institutions, multilateral development banks, private lenders, investors, as well as banks. Through specific economic reforms, government will unlock opportunities in sectors of the economy that have great potential for growth. And these obviously include in mining, in oil and gas, and in tourism. And tourism is one of those that we want to focus our attention on because it is a great job creator as we relax our visa provisions and we allow many more millions to come to our country. Now, the Job Summit Framework Agreement will support this through reforms also in other areas, such as streamlining of water license applications and registrations of medicines. The stimulus plan will see the reprioritization of 50 billion of public funding towards activities that will stimulate the creation of jobs in agriculture, the township economies, and rural areas. By expanding the package of support to support black farmers, the plan will boost an underdeveloped part of the agricultural industry and also provide jobs to those who most need it. Government has also prioritized the revitalization of industrial parks, primarily in townships and in peri-urban areas, and these will create job opportunities in areas where many of our people live. This commitment to take jobs to the people also informs our plans to establish a township and rural entrepreneurship fund to support South Africans with businesses in townships as well as in rural areas. The plan will also have an impact on the filling of critical medical posts, including nurses and interns. The stimulus plan alone is not enough, as we all know. It needs to be accompanied by employment. It needs to be accompanied by bringing young people specifically into the job situation. We need to achieve growth that is inclusive and that is also redistributive. Everyone has a role to play in forging a social compact for jobs. Trade unions must continue to act as, yes, checks and balances. They must articulate and advance the interests of workers and must push back against exploitative practices and unsafe environments in the workplace. Unions have taken up the challenge to work with employers to eradicate discrimination in the workplace, to promote labor stability, to reduce income inequality, and to reach fair and sustainable agreements. Understanding that these are necessary conditions for increased levels of investment in order to create jobs. When it comes to business, firms have a specific responsibility themselves to provide goods and services, and also to introduce training and new technologies and production techniques which increase competitiveness as well as productivity and reduce the negative impact on the environment. Business leaders have taken up the challenge to better recognize the value of regulatory interventions which seek to root out private sector corruption and which seek to stimulate more inclusive growth through limiting anti-competitive conduct and structures. An effective social compact requires a capable as well as a developmental state. A developmental state that has the resources as well as the administrative capacity to offer workers and working people credible and effective programs of service delivery. That type of state, a developmental one, must be capable of guiding and regulating market activity in such a way that the structure of opportunity is transformed and is also inclusive. Our country needs a new approach to growth and development, one that is informed by our collective interest, and which also harnesses the capabilities of all social partners, who should see themselves as partners who are irrevocably committed to creating a prosperous society where all our people will lead a better life in peace and in harmony. We are agreed that our country cannot achieve meaningful progress without faster growth and a great deal more jobs. And we cannot achieve this if each of us as social partners work alone. We need to develop and enhance trust in each other as social partners, to understand how our shared and individual interests intersect and combine, to cooperate and to work together for a common vision and a common future, a growing economy in which the benefits are shared by everyone. Through this presidential summit, we are each as government, as labor, as communities, and as business, we are confirming our determination to build a better South Africa for all. I want to conclude by reminding us what we said in the preamble of the National Development Plan, a plan that the large majority of South Africans have embraced. We said in one of the portions of our preamble, we have created a home where everybody feels free yet bound to others, where everyone embraces their full potential. We are proud to be a community that cares. We have received the mixed legacy of inequalities in opportunity and in where we have lived. But we have agreed to change our narrative of conquest, oppression, and resistance. And may I add, as I paraphrase, unemployment, inequality, and poverty. We know what we do and how we do it is as important as what we want to achieve. What we are is because of who we have been and what we want to become. We are a people at work. We work to create plenty. our work brings us ever closer to our dreams. Work grounds our dreams, even the most fantastic that they can be or they are. The reality of work connects us to our dreams, close quotes. These are the dreams of millions of South Africans. It is these their dreams to find work that this job summit must make a reality. And as we sign to implement the framework agreement, as we embrace this framework agreement, let us remember the dreams of all those South Africans who want to find work, those South Africans who yearn to have work. Let us, all of us collectively, go out and implement these interventions. The interventions that have been identified are real, and if we all get committed to working to implement these interventions, we will be able to fulfill the dreams of South Africans. Thank you very much.